Hi! So, fun fact, this video was supposed to come out on December 1st, which is why I say a couple of things in the intro that in retrospect would make more sense if the video had come out on December 1st as scheduled. But as I was editing it, I realized that I had shot this video just as I fell sick. I'm still a little bit sick. And when I shot the video, I was basically doped up to my gills and I forgot about half the questions. So if you're watching this video and all of a sudden I look a little bit different than I did in the beginning of the video, that's why. It's the pandemic and I'm sick. Leave me alone. Hi, my name is Amrita and this is Amrita by the Book, where today we'll be doing the book addict tag that I first saw on Rosie's channel, and I'm going to link down to that as well as the original tag if I can find it. And also Nikki did this one because of course she did, and that reminds me that for December Nikki has a readathon that's planned out. It's the Final Fantasy readathon, and when I first heard about it I was a little bit I'm not sure because I don't do readathons because I have no discipline, but also I don't do Final Fantasy, so I was like, well, but if you look at her prompts, then she has tried her best to make it as inclusive as possible to as many people as possible. So if you're interested in readathons and if you're looking for something to do in December, then I highly recommend you check that out. Alright, the book addict tag. What is the longest amount of time you can comfortably go without picking up a book? So when I was young, I would say it was basically the hours that I was sleeping or doing other things. But I think over the years what's happened is that we all spend so much of our times online. Or well, okay, I'll speak for myself. I spend so much of my time online and there's so many different things to read. I mean, it could be my Twitter timeline, it could be Tumblr, it could be fanfic, it could be so many different things. There are always, amazing magazine articles to be read from around the world. There are newsletters. I mean, I'm never short of reading material. So actual, picking up a book versus reading something, I think those are two very different things at this point. So I think I am probably comfortable, I would say around like 24 to 48 hours without picking up a book. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen on occasion. How many books do you carry on your person, physical or device, at any one time? I've been pretty open about the fact that I will read on my phone if there's nothing else available, and I have a Kindle and I do a lot of my reading as ebooks, which means that I have basically access to anything as long as I have data. That said, I'm usually reading about like 3 to maybe 5 books at a time. So that's the number of books that I have downloaded on my app or on my Kindle. It's rather rare these days for me to carry a physical book around, especially because I really am not a very handbag kind of person, and even my bags are kind of tiny. So I don't really carry around physical books as much. Do you keep every book you buy or receive, or are you happy to pass them on to make space for more? So first off, I don't think I've ever passed on a book to make space for more. I mean, I can just make more space somehow in my in my living quarters somehow. I'll store it in, boxes underneath my bed if I have to. But as far as passing them on, if they've been gifted to me goes, I never really give away books that have been gifted to me. I've lost a couple of them in a few moves here and there, but I don't think I've ever given them away consciously. And that's because even if the book is not my thing, because like reading is very subjective. So generally speaking, there's more than a 50-50 chance that you're gonna misfire. So and I also find like a lot of readers do this thing where they're like, well, I love this book, so I bet my friend who likes to read will also love it. And honestly, that's also, you know, a coin toss. So a bunch of the books that I've been gifted over the years are books that I don't like, and some of them I haven't even read because they're really not my thing. But I would never give them away because they represent something to me, you know, like somebody put in the thought and the effort to go out and get it for me. So even if it's just lying around absolutely useless, it's fine because it's the sentiment that counts. But yeah, as for the books that I buy, usually if I'm moving, and that happens to me every few years, but if I'm moving, then I'll generally, you know, get a bunch of my books and donate them to the local library or, you know, something. How long would you spend in a bookshop on a standard visit? Does this bookshop have a cafe? Because I think my standard visit varies accordingly. Because I buy so many ebooks, I think it's no longer the norm for me to just, you know, pop into a bookstore every so often. So what I do instead is I plan it out. And I hate being rushed when I'm in the bookstore, because part of the thrill of being in a physical bookstore for me is the discovery. So there's always new things to just look at, to touch, to read the blurb, you know. It's just a very sensory experience for me. Also, I grew up and I don't know, I think this is a heartwarming story, but I have been told that it might be signs of benign neglect. But when I was little, my favorite bookstore was located right opposite my mother's favorite salon. And because my mom knew how much time I liked to take in a bookstore, what she would do is she would just take me to the bookstore. And it wasn't a big giant bookstore, you know, it was a very indie local bookstore. It's still there, you know, in Aurobindo Place in Delhi. If you ever go, then check it out. It's a great place and they give discounts. And I went there every week. The owners knew me, like everybody knew who I was. So it was very safe, at least to me. And I would spend like maybe an hour and a half in there just sort of browsing while my mom was getting her nails done or whatever. And it worked out for her and it worked out for me, and it's great. And that's the kind of support that I'm looking for in my life. So yeah, even today when I go, it's usually at least an hour. How much time per day do you actually spend reading? It can honestly vary because I'm such a mood reader, so sometimes a book will just grab me and refuse to let go, and then I'll be just obsessed about it and I'll spend the entire day unable to think or do anything apart from that book. But generally, I was telling Rosie the other day that I've developed this habit during the pandemic of waking up in the morning and then spending about 30 minutes to an hour just reading something, and it only works because I have nowhere to go. I mean, I'm gonna get out of bed, maybe take a shower, change into another set of pajamas, and then head to the living room. I mean, what am I doing? So yes, over the past 8 months or so, I would say between 30 minutes to an hour every day, and then anything on top is just, you know, gravy. Where does the task picking up a book appear on your daily to-do list? If I was that organized, I'd be running the world right now. But yeah, I guess it goes, you know, in the morning, right after I wake up. How many books do you reckon you own in total? Include ebooks. Okay, I'm not doing an actual count. I think it would freak me out. I get really weird about like things that I own and what that might suggest about me. But I am comfortable saying that I own in excess of 1,000, including ebooks. And I can't believe we have to count ebooks. I mean, everyone knows that it's not real. It lives in the cloud. It's invisible. That's not real. Approximately how often do you bring up books in conversation? Honestly, not that much. Like, I have a few friends who are really interested in books, and we will discuss things that we are reading at the moment. And I have a far larger section of friends who don't care about books at all, and it's fine. Like, we have other interests in common, that's why we are friends. I've never been the kind of person that has like a handy quote or, says things like, oh, as my favorite author said. Like, no, I have no idea what my favorite authors have said. I remember things, but I remember them in context. I never really bring them out of context into other conversations. Nor do I usually use information or opinions from books as buffer for my own. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm an incredibly opinionated woman. And I'm fine letting everyone know that those are my opinions. They might be wrong, but they're mine. Can't blame anyone else for them. What is the biggest book by page count that you have finished reading? Okay, this was actually interesting because I was really thinking about all the genre books that I've read, and I was thinking, I bet I read a lot of really large books because fantasy, everything is a giant doorstopper. And it's true, there are some giant books that I've read in fantasy, but I wanted to think about something that wasn't genre fiction, and I went on Wikipedia to look at the longest novels published, and guess what? I've read quite a few of them. And by quite a few, I mean like 3 or 4. There's David Foster Wallace's An Infinite Jest, which I did not finish, so that's not valid. There's Vikram Seth's A Suitable Boy, which is, I think, 1,400 pages roughly. And that one I did finish, so that's in contention. I've also read Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, which comes in at roughly 1,100 pages, and I don't know if I want to claim that. There's also an edition of Lord of the Rings that combines the 3 novels together, and that is about 1,100 pages as well. But I feel like that's cheating because most people buy it, as a trilogy rather than one combined book. But hey, the edition exists. I didn't come up with it. But I think the technical winner is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, which is around 1,500 pages. But I don't know if I can claim it because I read it when I was really young, and I just remember slogging my way through it because, I had to finish it. This was back in my completist mode. And I don't think I remember anything about it. Like, when I think about it, I remember the musical. So I don't think that counts. I think you have to remember at least something about the book for you to claim it. So I think I'm going to go with A Suitable Boy at 1,400 pages. Is there a book you had to get your hands on against all odds? Searched bookstores, online digging, stalked author, etc. So this actually happens to me a lot more than I realized because I was reading this question and then I was like, oh no, that's never happened. Oh, that has happened quite a bit. But then I was thinking about it, and I think the earliest that happened to me was with the Shelley School books. For those of you who don't know, Eleanor and Brent Dyer wrote the series of school stories set at first in Austria, and then as she was writing it, the Second World War broke out, so she relocated it to the school, that is, and her stories to the Channel Islands, and then to England, and then to Switzerland. And it went on for like decades. Like, she was writing these stories for decades, and for some reason they were just really popular with a certain kind of young Indian girl, of which I am one. And those of us who love it are obsessed with it, and I was. And there are still a couple of books in that series that I haven't read, and it kills me. Is there a book you struggle to finish because you refused to DNF? Yes, and it was entirely my fault. Ulysses by James Joyce. In case you don't know what that is, it is commonly held to be one of the most difficult texts in the English language. And what happened was, all my friends were taking this class with this really popular teacher who was, of course, rewarded for being interesting and popular by being let go a couple of years later. But basically, the school that I went to, we had seminar style classes, so you couldn't have more than, if it was a really popular lesson, then it would be like 15 people in class. So I wasn't able to get into that class, but all my friends were in it, and I was like, oh, I should read the book too. I mean, if I can't be in the class, maybe I can just talk about it to my friends. And what happened was, I read the book, and there are just some books that are just meant to be read in class with other people, and it requires people to just bring different facets together and to discuss them and to really understand what it is that is being said. And when you read it by yourself, you're welcome to sort of struggle through it if you want, but usually what happens is what happened to me, which is that it sort of sapped my will to live, and I have never had a worse time reading a book. What are 3 or some of your main book goals for 2021 if you have started planning? My big goal, and I've noticed this in myself, over the past few months, because I started this channel and it's been a positive influence in my life in so many different ways that I'm not quite ready to discuss as of yet even, but I've talked about some of them before, just having to just come out of myself a little bit and trying to find a new community. All of these things have been amazing, but there has been a thing that I have noticed in myself, which is it's not really fear of missing out, but a kind of desire to keep up with the Joneses, because everybody on BookTube seems to be reading certain books, and I kind of sometimes feel like I am missing out. So I find myself wondering if I should be reading this book, even though I'm not in the mood for it. And honestly, when I read books that I'm not in the mood for, it just ruins that experience and that book for me. And it's probably a really great way to get into a reading slump, and I don't need that. And also, this is a place where I try to be, myself. That was the entire point of this channel. It was for a place for me to be myself in a pandemic where I couldn't go out and be myself with my friends. I have very specific likes and dislikes, and I feel like I would be basically acting in front of you all if I tried to be this other person who's interested in all the new releases. I'm not. I love the backlist, I've said that before. Like, one of my favorite things to read is mid-20th century fiction. I love it. So I think my one big goal for 2021 is to sort of keep myself in check. I'm not saying that I never read anything new. I obviously do. But I think I'm going to try and ensure that I don't read things just to be a part of the conversation. That I try and just read things that I want to, and I try and be myself as much as possible, because, being on camera, it does change you. Let's not pretend. It's 2020, and I think we all understand how social media and performance in front of a camera changes a person and affects a person. And I think that is something that I'm going to be on the lookout for heading into 2021. Have you ever had the privilege of converting someone into a reader by inspiration or your incessant nagging? No, and I would never be that person. Like, I am 100% not the kind of person who's just like, oh my God, you should be reading. Why don't you read? Reading is fundamental. Just because I enjoy something, it doesn't mean that you should have to as well. You are absolutely free to enjoy whatever it is that you like. In fact, most of my friends have more than one great passion in their lives, you know, like the ladies in my book club, for example, most of them are K-drama fans or like, you know, East Asian drama fans. And they also love to read, and it's fine. I don't think one cancels out the other, or you have to only have like one great passion in your life. No, you should have multiple. There is so much out there in the world, and we are so lucky to be living in a world where we can access all these things. Why would you pick and choose? That said, I am 100% that person who will be in a bookstore and I'll see like maybe a little child or like a younger person who is browsing and sort of unsure, or they have to like decide between two pieces of literature, and I will butt in respectfully and try and help them make a choice, or even, you know, recommend other things to them, because I feel like sometimes parents have like very strict ideas of the kinds of things kids are allowed to read. And I'm not a parent and I don't want to give anyone parenting advice, but as a child who used to love to read, I have to say that you can sort of introduce kids to a variety of things, you know. I think it was Katie who was talking the other day about reading nonfiction books, like big coffee table ones with bright pictures and stuff. And I was telling her, you know, like that's how I started reading nonfiction. As a child, there would be all these coffee table books at my, you know, my aunt's at home, and I wanted to see what the pictures meant. Describe what books mean to you in 5 words. This is literally the worst question to ask somebody who is incredibly verbose, but escape, fun, empathy, booktube, life. Okay, I'm going to tag a few people at the end of this who I think are book addicts. There's Nerdy Nat, there is Margaret, there's Lana, Galactic Reads, and Liz. I'll tag all the channels down below so you can check them out. And as always, if this is a tag that you like and you would like to do, then please do them, and let me know in the comments so I can come and check it out. Till next time, this is Amrita by the book. For more videos, please hit the subscribe button.